welcome to my webinar about, here we are, how to build a property portfolio while still working. Now, this is very much from my own personal experience because that's what I did. I am now full-time in property, but I've been investing in property for a number of years beforehand. Bear with me. It often doesn't work in terms of the click through to start with, which I've never quite worked out why. Okay, a little bit about me. Spent 8 years as a captain in the Royal Signals. I left about 7 years ago, and I went into the civilian world. Worked for a company called FDM, set up an ex-forces program. Got a lot of experience in recruitment and project management from that time. Delivered lots of projects, a lot of them IT-based, but some of them construction-based. So for the Priory, I built a number of hospitals and a number of extensions, and did some big refurbs on Roehampton Hospital as well. So that's very much played into my experience in terms of the property piece. And whilst I was working in those roles, I built up my personal portfolio across the UK, which we'll have a look at this evening. And now, as I've said, I'm full-time property. I help support clients, start and build up their own property portfolios whilst we're still building and expanding ours. So I'm going to take you through the agenda, what we're going to cover, why you shouldn't give up your day job, because there are lots of benefits to investing in property whilst you're still working, choosing an investment area, your values and goals, because I think that just really helps with everything that you're doing to make sure you're working with the right people. The decisions that you need to make. We've got about 10, 15 decisions that you need to make before you start investing. What people you need. Often this is referred to as your power team, but it's not a particular term that I like. There's lots of people that you do need to help you on your journey. How we built our portfolio. Why diversification is so important, and this really kicked in at the start of Corona. And actually, we got quite lucky in terms of our diversification because a lot of it we didn't think about beforehand, but it very much brought it home at the start of that. I'm going to take you through a little exercise on the value of your time, which I think is really important because a lot of people forget about that your time is precious, and whilst you are working and you're investing your time, those of your family, those of your friends, it's not free. So we're going to take you through that. This is not a sales call, but I'm going to talk about very briefly the Full Circle mentoring program. Literally going to spend a minute or so on that. It would be remiss if I didn't do that. I'm going to take you through 15 top tips, and we're going to go through any questions. So, first of all, why you shouldn't give up your day job. There are significant benefits to investing in property whilst working. So one of which is you enjoy your job. A lot of people will say and give this narrative that you want to be leaving your job, and they talk about their job, just over broke, and all that sort of thing. Most of the jobs that I've ever done, I really, really enjoyed and loved. When I was in the army, for example, you didn't get paid a great deal as an officer, but I loved it. I wouldn't swap that for the world. So if you love your job, then absolutely do this side by side in terms of your property investing. Don't just give up something because there might be more money on it. Really think about that in your career. So property can be there to augment your income or assist in retirement. You might only be looking at 1, 2, or 3 properties. It doesn't have to replace it. Again, I see a lot of people who talk and say, well, you should be jumping into property, go full time. It's all about passive income. It's all about the management of your own time. It doesn't have to be. Okay, I think that investing in property whilst you're working alongside a job is a really valuable thing to do. The young people will call it a side hustle, but that's for them. Your self-assessment. Now, this is really important. And again, this is something that I came across only by accident, really, because once I had given up my job, one of the key things that people are asking for are your SA 302s. Now, if you're suddenly going into what effectively is self-employment and you don't have that background and that history that you can talk about in terms of your property investments, then you're not going to be able to access the same sort of funding and the good rates that you can when you can demonstrate it. So I think it's really important to build up your financial history before you even contemplate going into property full time. And it provides you with security and cash flow. If you've got a job at the moment and it's fairly secure, then, you know, in all honesty, you'd, you know, I certainly wouldn't be looking to get into property at this moment in time, full time. Absolutely invest, but I wouldn't be giving up that monthly paycheck and that security that comes with a full time role. It reduces the risk clearly because you've got that money coming in, and you, again, at the start of your journey, it reduces that risk to the lender, which means that you can get better rates, etc., etc. It really does help with your ability to get mortgages. You know, if you're earning over £25,000, you know, per year, that's kind of the sweet spot. That's the minimum amount that you want to be earning in terms of getting the best rates for your mortgages. Again, if you're going, you know, straight into to self-employment, then you're not going to be earning that £25,000 ceiling. And it's going to take you a little while to build up that cash flow and so forth. So again, don't jump ship too early, and potentially don't even jump ship at all. You can leverage your network whilst you're at work. A lot of connections that I've made who are investors now, people that I work with, are people that I worked with throughout my civilian career. That's an armyism, but you know, in my corporate career, those are people that I now leveraging, and I was able to do that because I told them what I was doing at the time. So you have access potentially to a terrific network. So nurture that at the moment in anticipation of leveraging it later on. And your network is not just for now, it's for life. So you can make those contacts and tell people what you do now. It might be 12 months, 5 years, 10 years time until actually you get something out of that. But I think it's really important to do that now. And property investing takes time. A lot of people will talk about the BRR strategy, the buy, refurb, refinance. It's one of the things that we do, and it's one of the cornerstones of our investing. But it does take time to get that money back out. So generally, you'll be looking to refinance at least 6 months after you purchase the property. That way you can get the best rates. You can refinance it earlier if you can justify an uplift in the property, but it does make it more difficult, and you are going to have access to, you're not going to have access to the best rates. On top of that, it potentially takes a couple of months for your rent to actually start coming in, because you'll have lettings fees, you'll have your initial snagging issues. You never really know in terms of your refurb how well it's gone until you actually have someone who's living there, who's testing it out every single day. That's when you're going to get your little leaks, you know, under the sink. That's when you're going to find out that the locks don't work properly or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of costs, small costs that add up in the first couple of months after you've let that property out. So it might be 6-9 months until you start getting rent come through if you're looking at a BRR strategy. So again, if you jump straight into that now, then, you know, it's going to be quite a way down the line until you start getting that monthly income. Hence, therefore, it's nice to do it whilst you're still working. Okay, choosing an investment area. I think this is, you know, one of the absolute most important things that you can have, that you can do when you're investing in property. I've got some notes on this as well, so apologies if I'm looking away. I'm looking at a different screen at times. So evaluating an area. Now you have to start somewhere. A lot of people will tell you about a gold mine area that might be in the northeast, it might be in West Wales or North Wales or wherever it is. And it works for them. It doesn't necessarily work for you. There are a lot of other things that you have to weigh up rather than just the yields and the property prices. One of which is your time. We'll talk about your time later on, which is incredibly important. We have some properties in the northeast. I live in South London, and they're 262 miles away from where I live. If I wanted to go and visit them, that's going to take me probably 5 hours to drive up there. Now, if I'm working and there's a little bit of a snag and I want to go and visit, that's just not practical. So whilst it might deliver the best yields, from a practicality perspective, when you're working, it might not be the best area. So you've got to start somewhere. So think about the town, city that you live in, clearly. Cities that you have lived in previously, where you've been to university. Look at recommendations from other investors, but take them with a pinch of salt. Look at areas that have got or having big investments into infrastructure, and the classic example of that is HS2 and areas in Birmingham as an example. And you might go away on business and visit places. It's one of the reasons that we've invested in certain areas as well, because I spent a lot of time in Leeds whilst I was working for FDM, and that's why we invested in a couple of areas around there. So you've got to start somewhere in terms of evaluating. Then start doing your background research. And a lot of this can be, desktop based. Have a look at the areas. Google them. Have a look at their wiki pages. You can often find the local plan from the council in terms of what they're doing and what investment that's going into their area. But do take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt. A lot of these plans don't necessarily come to fruition. It's a forecast from a council, and whilst they generally look all positive, they all look positive. So if you're looking at a particular area, talk about the investment, but if you go and have a look at another area, it'll also talk about investment that's happening. So have a look at the town and the city plans, but again, take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt. There's a great website called Check My Postcode, and that'll give you an overview of a specific area. And then have a look at the news. What's happening in the news. What's happening locally. You'll get a feel of what the crime rates are and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things that you can do in terms of your background research. Then you want to have a look at the property prices and the market rents. Now, property prices, they're pretty easy to find out. You've got lots of websites that you can use, Rightmove, Zoopla, you've got Mouse Price, and you've got another one called Home. In terms of the market rents, that's a little bit more difficult, but if you're looking at these over a period of time, then you get to build up a good picture of that. Now, with property prices, you'll see what properties have actually sold for. There's going to be a time lag, and usually it's around about 6 months. But when you're looking at rental and the market rents, you never actually see what the final rent went for. What you'll see is the asking price, and often those disappear from the search engines and so forth. But you won't actually see what the actual price is that it's gone for. Now, that's usually not a massive discrepancy. But if your margins are really tight and actually something's advertised for £1,000 a month and it ends up being rented for 900, okay, you've got to be aware of that, because actually that's money off your bottom line. So keep an eye on things and speak to agents as well. The best thing to do with agents, I see a lot of people and they'll phone up and pretend you're this and that. Don't do that at all. Just phone them up and speak honestly, because you're trying to build a future relationship with people. And 9 times out of 10, every agent I've spoken to, and I've just said, look, I'm a property investor. I'm interested in finding out what the rents are, because if I go ahead and buy something, then potentially I'm going to be using you to rent out, and people are happy to talk to you. So I think just be honest is my advice there. Then have a look on things like Google Maps. Have a look at the local area. Don't just rely on pictures in listings and things like that. You don't necessarily know whether there's a tire shop next door or a cemetery or various other strange things that you might see. So having a look on Google Maps and Street View will help you out. Just be aware clearly that there is a time lag on these things, and sometimes they are 2, 3, 4 years out of date. But it gives you an idea, and this is all about your background research. In terms of yields, I'll send you the link if I can. But if you type into Google UK buy to let yield map, then there's a map that comes up and shows you all the yields that you have within the UK. So if you're targeting a certain percentage, then that'll give you an idea of what areas to look in. So as an example, if you were looking for a property with an 8% yield, you're not going to find any of those in London. I'll be very surprised. If you can, then I'm very interested in that. But have a look at yields, because that very much determines where you might be looking. And your rental demand, again, that's very much talking to your agents and seeing what the demand is. You can also have a look on open rent. Open rent is a nice way of doing it, and you can, and a lot of people, so this is a double-edged sword. You can put free adverts in open rent, and you can test the market. But of course, what happens is loads and loads of people are putting free adverts in there, so it's difficult to determine which are the genuine properties that are there. So it's a double-edged sword with your rental demand. We talked about agents, very much. Alerts, once you've honed down your area, what sort of things you're looking at, then make sure you set up your alerts on Rightmove and Zoopla. Not every property is on both of them, so it's worthwhile setting up alerts on both. Rightmove is by far the biggest platform. But there are a lot of properties that will only appear on Zoopla, and certainly when you're selling a property, it's always worth asking how they're selling that and how they're advertising it. And then other data sources, again, I'll have to send this through because they're very much links. I'll just extract this from a document that I've got. But you've got census data that you can have a look through. It's clearly going to be a little bit out of date now because the census was in 2011. But you can look at crime statistics. There's a website called Check Your Area. The LHA rates is really, really useful to look at, because essentially that's the minimum amount of rent that you should expect from your investment. Now, some areas work great in terms of LHA, and they're near or potentially the same as the market rent, but in some areas they're very much lower. So, as an example, one of the areas that we invest in is Gloucester, and the LHA rates are nowhere near the market rate. So we wouldn't even consider renting to someone on universal credit, simply because they'll get nowhere near the market rent. But in other areas, certainly the northeast and some areas in London as well, the LHA rates are actually very similar to the market rent. So we do rent to people who are on universal credit in those areas. Of course, have a look at your stamp duty calculator. Make sure it's an up-to-date version, given the stamp duty holiday. Property Tracker is a nice little add-on that you can have if you use Google Chrome, and that shows the where property has gone up and down on Rightmove. So that's a nice little thing to have on Google Chrome, and have a look at the planning portal as well. You want to be having a look at local developments, especially if you're conducting a refurb. You might be doing something within permitted development. Have a look at local planning. It's always good to understand, what precedents are out there for you. So I always think it's useful to go through your values and goals. Now, we're not going to spend a great deal of time on this today, but what it does is it helps you determine the types of people that you want to work with and the types of relationships that you're going to have. Now, property can be quite a small world, but there are lots of different types of people who are out there, some of which you're going to get on with, some of which you're not. Some of that is down to risk, and some of that is down to personality. So I think it's worthwhile going through just yourselves, what your values and goals are, and that'll determine the types of people that you want to work with. So, this is just a little word circle of all the sorts of values and goals, and clearly you can't find anyone who has all of those as their values, but you want to pick out your top 2 or 3 and make sure that they resonate with the people that you're working with. And in terms of your goals, it's massively important to go through this and determine what your goals are. A lot of people start out and they say, I want to invest in property. And if you ask them the question, why, they don't actually know. Which is a bit mental, really, when you think about it. They've seen it, they perhaps got some money, they want to invest in property, but they don't really know why. So I would urge everyone to go through their goals to determine what they're looking at, and that's your personal goals, your professional goals. Capstone goals is essentially your milestones. So your intermediate goals, really. So you want to be looking at short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, and ultimately what your lifetime goals are. What is your why? Why are you investing in property? Is that for yourself? Is that to augment a pension? Is that to replace an income? Is that to pass on a legacy? Whatever it might be, all of those classic examples of why you invest in property. But you need to determine what is your reason, because otherwise you're just going to be moving in this space really without any guidance and without any clue of what you're doing. So I think it's really important to go ahead and do that. So these are some of the decisions that I think you need to be making and thinking about when you're investing in property. So first of all, your time. Now, your time is precious. A lot of people, is true. Will say, time is the thing that you can't get back. Okay, it's incredibly important. How much time do you want to invest in investing in property? Is that something that's 2-3 hours a day, or is that something that's going to be 2-3 days a week? Well, to think about it, and then you'll know what you actually can and you can't do. So we've talked about your area. That's self-explanatory. We talked about your goals as well. You need to think about your desired income. What are you actually looking for in terms of your investment in property? Is it £500 a month, £1,000, £10,000 a month? If you can determine that, then you can start to work out what your strategy is. Because if it was £10,000 a month, for example, and each of the buy-to-let properties that you have in your area brings in £500 a month, then you've got to get to 20 properties, okay, just as a broad brush, if you're just looking at standard buy-to-lets. If you're really hard on that sort of income, then you might be looking at HMOs or things that bring in more income for you. But it helps determine what your strategy is. You need to work out what your capital is, what you have available. And one of the things I'll talk about later on is to do a financial health check on your finances. It's massively important. A lot of people don't know what they have coming in, and they don't know what they have coming out. They don't know what's on their credit card. They don't know what loans that they've got. All of these things you should know, because ultimately you're going to be asked these questions by a lender, be that a traditional lender, be that bridging or whatever it is. They're going to dig into that detail, and that's where people can come unstuck if you don't know what that is. So very much do a financial health check and work out what capital you have to invest in. Again, that feeds into your strategy. What type of property do you want to look at? Are you happy with flats? Are you looking at 2 up, 2 downs in your traditional kind of terraced areas? Are you after family homes? Determine what you want. It's not always based just on the figures, although I'm very much keen that people should look just at the figures. But as much as I hate to say it, you have a bit of an emotional attachment, especially if you're starting with your first couple of properties. So you have to be happy with the types of properties that you are looking at. And then think of the type of tenants as well, especially if you're going to be self-managing these potentially. I don't necessarily recommend that if you are starting out, but do you want to be dealing with students? Do you want to be dealing with professional tenants, or do you want to be dealing with people who are on universal credit, as an example? Okay, they all come with their own benefits and their own disadvantages. So you've got to think about what type of tenants that you want to work with, and that of course feeds in the type of properties as well, because you don't want to be putting students in a 3-bed flat in the middle of nowhere. That's just not going to work as an investment. So it all ties in together into your strategy. So you need to decide what you're doing. I also think that you should start and think about your tax and your business structure right from the start. Okay, and this is where you need to get professional tax advice. I certainly can't give it. I can point you in the right direction, but you need to be thinking about: are you going to invest in your personal names? Are you going to invest through a limited company? What tax provisions can you think about now? A tax advisor will be able to talk you through all of that. It's far easier to do that at the start than 5 years down the line. Then you want to think about, and this ties in with your time, what you're going to manage and what you're going to outsource. And the classic here is around management of tenants. You can outsource that, of course, to agents, or you can do that yourselves. And it's not just a simple question of time. As an example, we have some properties in London, one of which we rent out for £1,650 per calendar month, and it's right around the corner from me. So even when I was working, I was absolutely happy to manage that, because if I gave that to an agent, then I'm probably paying 10% plus VAT on that. So that's £200 a month. Now, for 200 quid a month, I'm perfectly happy to answer some queries and some calls, arrange some maintenance, and if there are any issues, to go and sort that out. For properties that I have in the northeast, where actually the rent that I'm getting on that is maybe 400, 450 per month. Even if I was in that area, I would absolutely be employing an agent to deal with that, because it's not worth my time to do it. Okay, but it's worth my time, to save £200 a month, but it's not worth my time to go and save 50 quid a month. So you need to think about lots of other things in terms of what you can outsource. If you're investing in your personal name, for example, you can do your own tax returns and accounts. Do you want to do that? Is that something you want to learn about? If you're an accountant, then fantastic, great. The other things, you've got all of your refurbs and maintenance, all that sort of thing. You've got to think about what you want to manage and what you want to outsource. What is your free time, and what is that worth to you? What is your risk? This is incredibly important. Property investing, along with any investing, has an inherent risk with it. If anyone tells you differently, they're absolutely wrong. Property prices can go down as well as up. We can all look at the 18-year property cycle. We can all look at what has happened historically, and we can make reasonable predictions about what's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years. I defy anyone to predict what's going to happen in the next 12 months, to be perfectly honest with you. We really don't know. And if anyone says that they do, great, catch up with them in 12 months and find out how wrong they are. So what is your risk appetite? What amount of money are you prepared to potentially lose? Is that money that you can afford to lose? If you are risk adverse, then perhaps you want to be looking at properties in different areas to actually, if you are happier with a riskier strategy. Okay, so just be comfortable in terms of what your investments are. Then you think about your buying decision. Okay, what is the process that you are going to go through? Who has to sign that off? Does a partner have to sign it off as well? Do you have to talk to them? You need to make sure that you have all things lined up. Your broker, solicitor, and all this sort of thing. Okay, so what is your buying decision, and how are you going to decide to buy something? And that ties in with what your metrics are. So for some people, they might be saying, okay, I'm only going to buy something that is 25% below market value, or I'm only going to buy something that gives me 8% yield. I'm only going to buy something that I can take all of my money out on. Whatever it is, you need to determine what your metrics are and then start comparing potential investments like for like. Okay, now whatever your metrics are and what you want, that's personal to you. Don't compare yourself to other people. But what I would say is don't necessarily get hung up on these things as an absolute. If, for example, you're looking at a property and you determine it's 22% below market value and you've set a barometer needs to be 25%, are you really going to turn that property down for the sake of a few £100 when there isn't necessarily another alternative? Because you've got to think about the opportunity cost as well of not investing into something. And there's never the perfect property. There's never the perfect investment that comes around. Sometimes you've got to take a little bit of a hit on some of the metrics that you may have determined. Otherwise, you might be procrastinating here, and we might be in the same position in 12 months, 2 years' time, and you actually haven't invested anything because the perfect property investment has never come around. And you want to determine how passive or active you want to be. Now, you can do everything yourself, or you can outsource pretty much everything apart from your mortgage application and some paperwork. Okay. So you need to determine where you are on that scale. And again, that's personal to you. I went down the route of doing pretty much everything myself, spending weekends and bank holidays doing refurbs and things like that at the start. I know people that wouldn't even contemplate doing such things. So you need to determine where you are on that scale. Then this is a question for you. Do you tell your employer? It's just something to think about. Okay, how are they going to react? Are there any issues about it? Only you can determine that. But that plays into your network and your social media. I've got a session next week on LinkedIn and the value of networking and social media, and it is incredibly powerful. But if you have an employer that isn't going to take too kindly to doing that, you need to think about it very carefully. And then what are your obstacles? Now, think about this beforehand. Now, this could be the fact that you have outstanding loans. It could be that you have bad credit, all those sorts of things. Think about what issues and challenges you're going to have now, and then talk to the right people about them, particularly your broker when you talk to them about getting finance. If you're upfront with them, they can deal with it and they can find you a suitable mortgage product. What you don't want to happen is that you get 99% down the road, the lender brings up a query and you say, yes, that's a bit of a problem. And you haven't told your broker, okay? Tell them everything up front, okay, to get that out of the way, and then they'll determine what the best product is for you. So those are all the decisions I think that you need to be making when you are investing in property. And this is the important one, do your due diligence on everyone and anyone that you work with. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter if they're a recommendation from someone. Do your own due diligence on them. It's massively, massively important. It's your money, it's your time, it's your everything that you're investing. Okay, don't just trust the word of people. Make sure that you look them up and check them out beforehand. Great. I'm going to take a couple of questions just to hopefully help with the flow of this a little bit. Okay, can you point me in the direction of a tax business structure? I can point you in the direction of a tax advisor. I can't talk about specific business structures because it's very much dependent on you and your circumstances. Greg, I'm not going to read who they're from, by the way, because obviously it's being recorded. If you buy into a limited company, do you need to be making 25 grand to get a buy-to-let mortgage? Great question. I can't tell you with absolute certainty. And the answer is you don't actually have to be earning 25 grand to get a buy-to-let mortgage in your personal name. But that's usually the level, and above that level means that actually you have access to more products. You can usually get a mortgage, as long as you can afford it, in most circumstances. But the further outside of the ideal client you are, the more risky you are in there. Therefore, the more you'll pay for that product. But when you're investing in a limited company, essentially they look at your personal circumstances as well, because certainly when you're starting out, your company has no history and no background. And if it's your first one, it's got no assets. So they're going to make their judgment very much based on you as a person rather than your business. Great. So, oops, I've gone too far. Here are some of the people that you need to work with. I've probably missed a few people off here, but the key ones, in the middle, your solicitor, your broker, investors, if you're working with investors, accountants, tax advisor, builder, but lots of other people that you'll meet and that you'll need along the way. The key to this is very much building up those relationships. And again, they're very much long-term relationships. Property is a long-term thing. I have kissed a lot of frogs, especially with brokers and especially with plasterers. Goodness knows how many plasterers I've been through. Perhaps I'm a bit too picky, but hey, there we go. They're my investment properties. I can afford to be picky if I want to be. Brokers, I've got a couple of good brokers now that I work with, but I've been through 5 or 6 that I would not touch with a barge pole again. So you do have to kiss a few frogs, but ask for recommendations from people. But like I say, still do your due diligence. Just because, as an example, if they worked well with me, doesn't necessarily they're going to mean that they're going to work well with someone else. So here's how we built our portfolio. It's just a few bullet points, really, on what we've done. So we built it steadily. Most of our properties we bought over the past 3 years, and that's because over the passage of time we're able to release equity and use that to buy further properties. Now, you see a lot of people who build things up massively quickly, and fair play to them. But that's pretty difficult if you're also working a full-time job. When I started this, I was working in London Bridge. I used to get into work at 8 o'clock, and then it was quite a social company. So often I wouldn't get home until 9, 10 o'clock at night. Got an hour commute each way. So then you're doing things on a weekend. You have a severe restriction on your time. So again, don't compare to other people. And there's nothing wrong with building things up slowly and steadily. So we talked about recycling money, and the classic buy, refurb, refinance model. I think most people will know about. But essentially, you're buying a property that you can add value to at the front end. You then do something with that property, either refurbish it, reconfigure it, perhaps get a lease extension on it, and you add that value, and then you're able to refinance that after a period of time and to take an element of that money out. Now, the best case scenario is your classic MIMO, which is your money in, money out, where all the money that you put in, you get back on your refinance. Now, we've done that on a couple of occasions, but it's become harder and harder to do. And again, if you're waiting for that golden deal, there might be deals that you actually miss because it doesn't fit that exact criteria. And then this is something that I think is again seriously kind of underrated to an extent. I call it the 2-year cycle. Simply because if you go and buy a buy-to-let property, often you'll get that on a 2-year fix. And after that 2-year period has come to an end, if you have conducted a bit of a refurb on it, doesn't necessarily have to be something big. You can extract value when you come to refinance at that 2-year cycle period. Now, there are benefits to doing this, because if you're buying something that can be lettable at the point of purchase, you can get a standard buy-to-let mortgage on it. You don't have to therefore pay cash. You don't have to look at bridging, because it's mortgageable straight away. And you can make those improvements. So you can extract that value out in 2 years' time. So you don't get it straight away, but there's some serious utility to doing that, because it doesn't suck up all of your finances going through bridging, for example. So it's something to think about. We've used investor finance to help us. As many people do. Ultimately, you have a limited amount of capital. Everyone has a different size pot, but there's always a floor to that pot. So using investor finance can help you out. For those that know me, we do a lot of auctions. I think we bought 8 or 9 properties through auctions. That was what the webinar was on last week. So have a look back at that, and just make sure that you do all of your due diligence and you have everything, all of your ducks in a row ready before you go to an auction. Vanilla buy-to-lets as well. This is again something that's underestimated. It doesn't always have to be a big refurb. You can go and buy something if you bought that below market value, or even at market value, and it works. That can be a good investment. Okay, you don't have to be doing a whole load of work on these things, especially when your time is limited. We bought something, a nice 3-bed house up in a place called Tong, which is in between Leeds and Bradford, and we only had to spend £500 on the property, and we rented it straight out, and it's been rented out for 4 years. We hardly had to put any work into it. So don't always think that you have to go and do a massive refurb on things. Vanilla buy-to-lets very much have a place. So understand your strengths and your USPs and your story. I think this is incredibly important. Everyone has a background. So whatever you're doing in terms of your job and your role, it will help you in your journey. Now, for me, it was all about project management. Pretty good in terms of the financial picture. Having worked in the corporate world for 5 years and had experience delivering refurbs on big projects. So that was my strength, and that was my USP, and that's what I played to. Now, my weaknesses, certainly at the beginning were very much around the networking piece and asking for help and support, and that's what hopefully I have worked on over the last few years. But play to your experience, because whatever you have, if you're an electrician, if you've been an estate agent as an example, you're going to have some really good benefits in there that you should be using to support yourself on your journey. And I'll talk about your story. When you make an offer on a property, it's always about the monetary value. It's about your ability to proceed and your position and your story. So your story often, really helps if, for example, you are a first-time buyer, or if you're a cash buyer and you go in and you're a lovable couple rather than a horrible old dirty rogue of a property investor. Play up to your story. It's really, really important. Ultimately, when you make an offer on a property, it's not just about the monetary value. We didn't overextend ourselves. I think that's really important. Again, that comes down to financially health checking yourself and don't overcommit. We kept it simple to start with. Our first property was a 1-bed flat in Mitcham, nice little refurb, and then I think it was probably another year until we invested in the next property, and progressively we've taken that up a notch at a time. We haven't jumped in with a 5-bed HMO with a commercial property around the back and building a new build on a plot of land next to it. We've taken it slow and steady whilst we built things up. And we made a hell of a lot of sacrifices though in terms of money. We clearly we saved up in terms of our capital. We decreased our spending. We were very prudent in terms of refurbishments on our own property that needed to be done as well. And we made a lot of sacrifices in terms of time as well. So weekends, evenings, bank holidays, we spent at our properties. Again, that's what we did. We don't do it now because we scaled up. I think it's a journey that is really important for some people to go through, but not everyone has to go and do that. They can be somewhat more passive from when you start. So did a lot of refurb work ourselves. Built great relationships. Like I said, kissed a lot of frogs. That's just part of it. You can't find all of the right people, all the right great people at the start. You are going to go through some people who you just don't work with. But if you look at your values and your goals and the way you work, hopefully that will minimize some of the challenges that you have. Telling people what you do, incredibly important, because again, this is all about building up your network. And we've got properties that have come through that. I don't know where those hearts have come from. That's very strange. Okay, and we work bloody hard. Probably our work-life balance at times was very much out of sync. Probably working too hard. But those are sacrifices that we made. I wouldn't necessarily change a thing as we go back. And we had goals. We had a set amount of capital that we wanted to have, and also a monthly income before I moved on to something different. So we set our goals out and we hit them, but we were flexible with them as well. We bought in areas that we knew. I can tell you now that you can look at great areas to invest in, and some of those are the likes of Manchester and Liverpool and Glasgow. I don't know those areas at all, so therefore I don't invest in them. It's as simple as that. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I think it's really important to buy in areas that you know well. So South London, example, we've lived here for 7 years now, so we know what's good and what's not. A lot of places in London don't work for investment, but we have some great areas that do. The north and northeast, certain areas there. I ended up working there, and therefore got to know people, got to speak to people, and very much knowing those areas on the ground. And then Gloucester, which is one of the areas we've been looking at the last couple of years. It was actually my last posting before I left the military, and my other half grew up in Cheltenham, which is a couple of miles down the road. So we know the area very, very well, and we know a lot of people who are there to support us. And then we've got a lot of diversification within our portfolio. A lot of people will concentrate on one area. That works for them, doesn't work for us. We like the diversification bit, and certainly when it came to Corona, not by design at all, but we found out the diversification that we had in terms of tenants really helped us through that. So these are the ways in which you can diversify. Now, excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink a second. Is to think about these, and it doesn't mean clearly that you have to diversify in every single area. It doesn't mean that you're taking a scattergun approach, but perhaps you might want to think about one or two of these areas, so you don't have all of your eggs in one basket. So you can diversify by the type of property. So a lot of people invest in the northeast, for example, and your classic kind of 2 up, 2 down. But we invest in pretty much every type of residential property, and that really that's helped us. That's helped us. If you look at, for example, flats, we invest in flats, but at the moment you could argue, and I haven't seen any proof of this, to be fair, but if your entire portfolio were flats and apartments, that might well be a bad thing in terms of Corona at the moment, because people are looking at outside space. But we have a number of flats, but we also have a number of properties with outside space as well. So type of tenants, and this is a diversification bit that really kind of hit home. And as I said, it's not by design, but we have working tenants. We have those on universal credit. We rent to councils directly, and we also have people who we have companies that we rent to, service providers, and so forth. So when it comes to Corona, if, for example, all of your tenants were in a town that has been completely hit, you've got all of your eggs in one basket, that might be a bit of a challenge. The fact that we rent directly to councils and to companies, we were very, very certain in terms of getting our rent from those properties. We have one tenant who was a self-employed horse riding instructor, and clearly her business went out of the window. But we spoke to her, and she's 1 month in arrears, and she has been for the past 7 months. And as soon as we get out of this, then we'll have a repayment plan. But I think type of tenants is a really good way to diversify, as is location and an area. City centres, can be good, especially flats in up and coming areas. But now we might be seeing a bit of a withdrawal from city centre. And in terms of area, the classic up north for yield and down south for capital growth. And then who to rent to, we spoke about that. It's similar to type of tenants, but if you're renting to a service provider or to a company, there are certainly benefits in that. If you if you rent to a company, you don't rent on a standard AST. So you, as an individual, have far more rights. If they don't pay their rent for 4 weeks, you can evict them, and you don't issue them a Section 21 or a Section 8. They're a lot easier to get rid of than your standard tenants. Diversify through your strategy as well. Your financing options, you don't necessarily have to use the same options all the time. You can use investors, you can use bridging, you can use your own funds. We talked a little bit about yield and capital growth, and your exit strategy as well. Again, you don't have to be doing the same thing in terms of refinancing. You can look at flipping, as an example. It's a good idea sometimes to bring in those chunks of money and not just your monthly return. So diversification is really important. Again, you don't have to do all of these things from the start, but I think it's something to think about as you are starting out. This is a nice quote. I don't actually know how true it is. I'm really not a car person, but I quite like it. When things don't happen right away, remember it takes 6 months to build a Rolls Royce, and it takes 13 hours to build a Toyota. So it's a bit like your good old classic, tomato ketchup. Good things come to those who wait. So I want to take you through. It might be a little bit dry. We're not going to spend a long time on it, but the value of your time, because I think this is so important. Something that is massively missed out. Especially when you watch someone, for example, on Homes Under the Hammer, they've gone and bought something for 50 grand, spent £10,000 of their own money, and spent 2 years refurbishing it and sell it for 62 grand. They completely missed the point that actually they've spent 2 years refurbishing them, and your friends and your family, their time is precious and worth money. So I think it's an incredibly important concept for investors to get to grips with, and that's your hourly and your daily rate. So if, for example, you've got a small leak in your rented property, what are you going to do? You're going to pay a plumber or handyman to go and fix it, or are you going to go and do that yourself and save yourself a few quid? Now, if you're a contractor or if you get paid hourly, you're going to know what your hourly rate or your daily rate is. But if you're paid annually, you don't necessarily know what that is. So you can work out your daily rate simply by your annual salary divided by the number of working days per year. Okay, it's not the number of calendar days. But I think it's quite important to understand it. So, for example, if you're earning £40,000, your daily rate is around £176, and your hourly rate is £22. So, you've got to think when you're investing in property, what are your high value tasks? Do you want to be spending money going around cleaning a property, for example, when you can go and pay a cleaner to go and do that? Or do you want to be thinking about the financial aspects of things that are going to bring you far more benefit in the long term? So I think it's worth going through that exercise to find out what your hourly rate is, and then you can find out how long you have to work to get £100 in your pocket, £1,000 in your pocket, and it gives you an idea of some of the costs. So back to our little example of your leak. It's a realistic breakdown of your time clear. It depends on where the property is, but I've got 30 minutes travel time, 30 minutes to evaluate the issue, 60 minutes to go to a DIY store and buy some materials, fixing it and testing it, and then 30 minutes to travel home. So that's 3.5 hours to go and fix a leak, and that assumes that you do that properly the first time. You don't have to go back. So based on the hourly rates that we just worked out, if you're earning £50,000 as an example, the total cost of that to you is about 96 quid. Okay, so that's what 3.5 hours work is. So is it worth it? Only you can answer that. But I think it's really important to think about it and think about outsourcing and getting people to do those jobs for you, and you can concentrate on the higher value items. So, like I said at the start, I'll take you through very briefly the Full Circle property mentoring program. As I said, this is not a sales call. If you are interested, then give me a shout afterwards. But we have a 12-month mentoring program. It's one-to-one. It's bespoke to each investor. We have bi-weekly accountability calls, 4 quarterly strategy days in person, your location, and we take you through the Full Circle property life cycle. And importantly, we handhold you through those first 2 investments, and 50% of the payment is contingent on you completing on those investments. What I see from a lot of mentoring programs is it's great to get a lot of knowledge and expertise, but if you don't actually go and do anything, I don't see the point. I don't see the point from my perspective, and I don't see the point from the people that I work with. So if that is of interest, then please give me a shout. I think that was less than 2 minutes that I promised you that I'll spend on it. So here are my top 15 tips. It just seemed to work quite nicely in terms of the boxes that I've done. I talked about your tax returns earlier, and don't wait until the deadline. You're generally about 18 months or so behind in terms of your tax returns. The sooner you can get them done, the sooner that you provide your lender with a history of your finances. So as soon as the tax year finishes, get it done in your first couple of tax returns. If you can get 2 or 3 of your 302s done, then you've got that history, and it's going to help you massively in terms of you being able to get funding. Understand what a portfolio landlord is. You're generally classed as a portfolio landlord when you have 4 or more properties. And at that point, lenders will look at your entire portfolio in terms of your lending. Before that, they'll look at it on an individual basis. So if you have something within that portfolio of 4 or 5 that is a bit of a turkey, that isn't a good investment, then that has the potential to bring down your lending capability on your entire portfolio. So think about being a portfolio landlord now, if that's where you want to get to, and plan accordingly. Treat property investing as a business right from the start. It is a business. Make sure that you have your tax in order. Make sure you've got your systems, your processes, everything like that. If you treat it like a business from the start, then it's going to really, really help you further down the line. Sooner than you know it, you might have 5, 6, 7, 8 properties, and if you don't even have a simple spreadsheet, if you're looking at things on the back of a fag packet, you might miss when your mortgages come up for renewal. That'll cost you money. You might miss your insurance renewals and things like that. So treat it from business very much from the start. Talked about this, offer referrals, recommendations for your team. Massively important, but do your due diligence on them as well. Be aware of the full cost of refurbs. So when you have a property that is empty, you're paying council tax on that. That can soon add up, even on small value properties. The council tax can cost you £100, £150 a month, and then you've got utilities on top of that. So it's important to get on top of that. And also the fact is, whilst you're conducting that refurb, it means that you're not getting any rent that's coming in. Always question someone else's figures and do your own due diligence. Now, this is especially pertinent of people who are sources. I might be a cynic sometimes, but often the refurbs and the figures are massaged to hit a certain figure or percentage. Okay, and what qualifications do they have to be able to spec up a refurb? If they're telling you that something's going to cost £2,500, £5,000 to go and refurb. Where is the schedule of works? Where are the quotations from people? Or have they just done that and they've come up with a figure? So always question those figures and do your own due diligence on them. And this is a question that I like to ask. And it's not necessarily a bad question, but especially when it comes to sources or a deal that you come across, ask people, if the deal is so good, then why are you selling it? Because if I'm selling a deal, then it doesn't work for me. Why does it not work for me? Now, there are valid reasons for, I might not have the capital to it might not be in my area. It might be something that is outside of my strategy. But I'd like to know from someone who's selling a deal why they're not keeping it for themselves. Property is all about compromise. Don't wait for the perfect deal. You are going to have to compromise on things. Don't procrastinate too much. Definitely do your due diligence, make fact-based decisions, but don't procrastinate too much. Property investors are problem solvers. This is how I look at it. If a property is perfect, then it's going to be sold via an estate agent, and it's going to be bought by a residential buyer. And you generally don't compete with those people. If you're a property investor, you're looking to solve problems, be that a lease extension, be that something that needs a refurb, someone needs to move quickly in terms of money. That's how you provide your benefit in terms of solving people's problems. Look to decrease your competition. Now, this is really interesting. A lot of people have moved to auctions over lockdown, for example, and a lot of people will say, auctions have just gone a bit mad. So we started buying things that are not sold at auction in some regional property auctions. And also when we're looking at things in Gloucester, for example, we look at the big London auctions for that, where there's not a great deal of competition. Now, it can be anything. It can be looking at bungalows. It can be looking at whatever. If there's too much competition and you think the prices are going for too high, then look elsewhere, and bargains can still be found. We talked about a financial health check on yourself. Massively important. You need to know how much money you have and where your money is coming and going. We talked about the value of your time, and this is a big one from my perspective. Think ethically, okay, and think for the long term. So, if, for example, you're renting out a property and it is to someone who is on universal credit, and you know that actually the entirety of their universal credit is going on their rent, then put in a fridge freezer, put in a washing machine to them. It might cost you 100 quid, 150 quid that you can get secondhand to go and put that in. But the difference that might make to a family is absolutely massive. Now, we're always going to get bad tenants, and we can't tell a lot of the time which tenants are going to be bad, but there are bad tenants who are made by bad landlords. So if you treat your tenants in the right way, then you improve your chances of having a good one. So think about things ethically, and it will pay off in the long run. Leverage your network, ask for help and support, look on forums, speak to people, network in person when you can, ask for support and guidance. It's something I certainly didn't do in the early years, and I thought I could do everything myself. I could do most things myself, but it doesn't mean that I did it in the best way. So leverage your network and lean on those people who are more experienced. And then when you do have that knowledge and that expertise, pay it back. When someone asks for some help and support, it might just be a comment on a forum, it might be a 5-minute call. Help and pay that back, because you invariably would have lent on people when you're gaining your knowledge in the first place. So it's never too late to start. I appreciate you're not going to be able to see all of these names, but I think this is a really nice diagram. And for example, we set up our business last year, but I just turned 40 in the summer, and Henry Ford started Ford Motor Company when he turned 40. And there are lots of examples of people starting businesses at lots of different ages. So we're not all Mark Zuckerberg starting a multi-billion-pound firm at 19. It's not too late. And this is a great Chinese proverb: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. So don't look back with regrets, but let's do something and move forward. So this is our property life cycle. This is what we do. I'm just going to bring this up. It's where we developed our name from. Full Circle Property. We have another number of other businesses that play on the Full Circle name, hopefully to take people through that entirety of the process, through acquisition to any kind of refurb, and the ongoing piece that we have there as well. So ultimately, that is what we do as a company, as an entity. I did aim for about an hour, so I'm about 10 minutes over. So apologies to that. I'm going to open it up to questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the list. I don't know whether anyone can unmute themselves. If you just bear with me, what I will try and do. So allow participants to unmute themselves. So you can now unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. So please do that. But I'll try and answer the text questions that we've got here. Okay, first one. Our financial advisor suggested, yes, it's better to be earning 25 grand for a limited company. They still ask for personal guarantees. Absolutely. Unless you're able to draw a salary above 25 grand from your property business, which is very unlikely at the start. Okay, for due diligence, what is the checklist? Great question. Depends on what you're doing the due diligence on. If it's people, you want to have a look at finances. You want to have a look at their company. You want to have a look at what previous work they've done. You want to look at references as an example. If it's a builder you're working with, you want to go and see previous work that they've done as well. So it's just all about digging into the background, and it's not trusting people, but it's having a look at what they've done and making sure that what they tell you is in fact the truth. And if you get a bad feeling about anyone, walk away. There's a million brokers, there's a million sources, there's a million builders. Okay, you'll find someone else. Don't be railroaded into using someone that you don't feel comfortable with. Could you go into the tax benefits of buying and holding, and how you depreciate your assets and what that means? I'm not quite sure what the question means. In all honesty, we don't depreciate our assets in terms of holding them in a limited company. I can't offer any tax advice in any case. So if you do have a tax question, then you very much need to speak to a specialist tax advisor on that. And if you message me, I can point you in the right direction. When looking at putting an offer on properties, should we be looking at taking off the 7% increase from the stamp duty holiday, or better just wait till it's over to see what happens to the prices? rather than offering a predicted decrease in price. So I wouldn't look at it and say that there is a universal slice that you're going to either take off or add. It's predicted now that anyone who agrees to buy a property from about 2 weeks ago, you only have a 50-50 chance of actually completing that before the stamp duty holiday. So you've got to be wary of that fact in any case. Now, as an investor, you're far more likely to get that through because you're not going to be in a chain, and hopefully you do better diligence on your broker and your solicitor. But all of those things are taking a lot of time at the moment. So you need to get your skates on if you actually want to purchase something, to take advantage of that stamp duty holiday. But also remember, if, for example, you're purchasing something at £100,000, then there's no benefit to stamp duty holiday at the moment. It's only for those higher priced properties in any case. So look at the figures. Do your due diligence. Don't take a standard amount of money off or not. If it stacks and you can take a bit of a hit if we do have a decrease, then potentially that's still worth going for. If you wait, we don't know what's going to happen. No one could have predicted that the market was going to go in this direction in February. If you spoke to 100 property investors, 100 experts in the industry, I don't imagine hardly any of them would have said that we'd be seeing a market like we are at the moment. So if it stacks and you're looking at it the long term, then I don't see a problem in investing. If you're looking at flipping a property, I'd be incredibly wary of doing that at the moment, and you'd have to be prepared to hold that as a buy to let, in my opinion. Fab. Johnny, in terms of costs of mentoring, we can have a chat about that, and I can chat to anyone about that as well. And the last one that I've got here, my primary residence has a £60,000 mortgage, but if I pay it all off, I'll incur early payment penalties. I want to rent it out. Can I pay off a little and get a buy-to-let mortgage for about 20 grand? I'm looking to get into rented with my partner. Okay, without knowing the specifics clearly, you can usually pay off around about 10% per year without incurring any penalties in terms of paying off that capital. So it's not always the case. But you need to have a look at your terms and conditions. If not, just phone up the mortgage company. And also the early penalties depends on how long you've generally signed up for a fixed year deal. So if you signed up on a 5-year fix, for example, your penalties of redeeming that in the first year maybe 5%, and that might decrease by 1% each time. So you just have to look at that. And it might be worth, you incurring those penalties if that gives you a bigger opportunity cost elsewhere. With all of these things, just make sure that you know exactly what all the costs are before you incur them. So just do your diligence and make sure you know the true cost of anything you do financially.
Stuart,
Hi, Gary.
In terms of that question as well, would there be an opportunity to speak to the bank around consent to let? Because I know that when Kirsty moved in with me, we rented her property out and got consent to let from her bank, so she didn't have to change her product.
Yes,
it depends, again, on what Roger's goals are and what he wants to do with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, great question. And look, people's circumstances change. As an example, we had consent to let on a property that I bought back in 2007. It was never intended as a rental property, but I was in the army. I got posting to Catterick, which is somewhere up north. This was a property in Bristol, and we got consent to let that out. It's usually renewed on an annual basis. Sometimes you pay a fee, sometimes you don't, but just ask your mortgage company. They might not be happy if you're trying to do that to release funds for something else. Usually it's only as an emergency. But just look at it, and also they might want to try and move you on to a buy-to-let mortgage after a period of time. So ask the mortgage company. Fab. Any other questions, queries, or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Fab. Thank you very much. Hopefully that was worthwhile. If you have any questions for me, separately, then give me a shout. I know Paul's not on today. I think he was due in Dubai, but there's a lot of good content on the Blue Oak channel. So if you haven't looked at it, have a look at that. There's some incredible people who are on there. A couple of people have messaged me privately. I will get back to you for that. Thanks for now, and speak to you all soon.